The moment Koko the gorilla reached out and cradled a snarling leopard cub, the entire sanctuary held its breath. No one expected what happened next. An apex predator and an ape, forming a bond nature never intended. But what started as compassion would soon spiral into heartbreak, the unlikely caregiver. Koko's role wasn't planned, but the second she saw the leopard cubs, trembling, alone, something shifted. Everyone expected hesitation. Instead, she reached for them. The cubs had been found near death, huddled in tall grass. Their mother? Gone. They needed help. But no one expected Koko would be the one to give it. Caregivers watched anxiously. Koko had never seen leopards. Would she react with fear or something else? One whispered, "What if they trigger her instincts?" As Koko moved closer, the air turned still. Her hand hovered. The cubs flinched. She paused. Then she sat down and waited. For hours nothing happened. Then one cub took a step forward. But could this fragile trust last? Koko wasn't trained for this. Leopards needed milk, warmth, constant care. Still, she tried. Bottles confused her, but she watched, learned. She mimicked caregivers. Slowly, she adapted, and the cubs responded. One curled into her fur, another nuzzled her chest. Koko held them gently, shielding them from noise, danger, and even other animals. But not everyone believed it would work. What if the cubs' instincts woke up? Each day brought new moments. Koko lifting a cub, humming softly, a cub swiping at her playfully, testing limits. Caregivers held their breath at every interaction. Still, the bond grew. Koko learned their moods. When a cub trembled, she offered her hand. When they mewed, she responded with soft vocalizations. But in the background, something was changing, a growing instinct. It started small. A toy shredded with sharp claws, a playful pounce that came a little too fast. Koko noticed. The staff noticed too. One afternoon, a cub lunged at a feathered lure. The next, it swiped at Koko's hand, claws barely retracted. Not aggression, but instinct. From there, the shift accelerated. The cubs became hunters in training. Their play turned into mock hunts. Their calls echoed louder, sharper, their pace faster. Koko, always patient, began stepping back. She watched. She groomed them after play. But she also stayed out of reach when needed. Her bond was strong, but her instincts were intact too. And yet, the marks on her hands, the guarded food, the low growls, they were signs. The cubs were changing, fast. Could this bond really survive? The team faced tough questions. Was it time to prepare for the next step? They began building a wild habitat, tall trees, hidden corners, space to stalk, a place for the cubs to grow into what they were born to be. Koko had no idea what was coming. She still curled around them when they slept. She still calmed them when storms scared them. But the time they spent together was shrinking. And then came the decision no one wanted to make. A heartbreaking decision. The reality of separating Koko from the cubs settled over the caregivers like a quiet weight. Their thriving health belied a looming heartbreak, as the closeness that had once kept the cubs safe was now holding them back from what they needed to become. The cubs were no longer the tiny, trembling animals that had clung to Koko's fur. They moved with purpose, their bodies growing stronger, their instincts sharper. For the people who had watched them grow, it was a moment filled with pride and a sense of loss. No one made the decision quickly or without debate. The cubs had spent nearly their entire lives within reach of Koko's calming presence. She was more than a surrogate mother. She was the center of their world. But the staff knew that keeping the leopards in her care forever would mean denying them the chance to develop the independence that their species demanded. Leopards are meant to roam, to hunt, to carve out their own territories. The idea of removing them from Koko was painful, but the alternative, keeping them dependent, was never an option. The transition started in small, careful steps. The cubs were moved to a new enclosure designed to mirror the wild: tangled branches, thick grass, places to climb and hide. Koko's visits were gradually shortened, giving the cubs more time to explore on their own. At first, not much seemed different. Koko greeted the cubs with her usual gentle attention, grooming them and holding them close. But as the days passed, the time apart grew longer, and the cubs' curiosity pulled them further from her side. There were moments when the strain showed. Sometimes a cub would linger at the edge of the new enclosure, watching for Koko. On one afternoon, as the caregivers encouraged the cubs to venture farther, one let out a piercing cry. It made everyone pause. The sound echoed with confusion and longing, a reminder that the cubs did not understand why things had changed. Still, the pull of the wild began to take hold. The cubs chased insects, stalked shadows, and tested their strength on low branches. The habits of their species were surfacing step by step. Koko watched these changes with a steady focus. When the cubs returned for their brief visits, she continued to care for them, grooming, sitting close, offering quiet reassurance. Caretakers noted no signs of aggression when the cubs left. Instead, Koko's eyes followed them as they disappeared through the grass. Her calm acceptance left the team wondering just how much she understood about what was happening. Did she sense that this was for the cubs' benefit, even if it meant letting go? Separating them struck a balance between preserving bonds and fostering independence. Wildlife rehabilitation often demands that caregivers weigh the risks of emotional attachment against the need for animals to survive on their own. In this case, the process was gradual, giving both Koko and the cubs time to adjust. The cubs grew more independent with each passing week, spending less time seeking Koko's comfort and more time exploring their environment. As the cubs settled into their new lives, the caregivers watched closely for signs of progress. The cubs' hunting skills improved. They learned to climb higher, move quietly, and react to the smallest sounds. When they paused to rest, it was often apart from one another, each finding a separate patch of sunlight or shade. The bond with Koko had given them a foundation, but their instincts were now leading them in a new direction. Koko's days changed too. She spent more time alone, her routines quieter without the constant presence of the cubs. She did not show distress. Her demeanor remained calm and steady, her appetite and habits unchanged. Caregivers saw in her a quiet resilience, the same strength that had allowed her to care for the cubs in the first place. The final step was the health assessment. The caregivers needed to know, would the cubs truly adapt, or would their early bond hold them back? The tests measured more than physical health. They looked for signs of independence, confidence, and readiness for a life beyond Koko's care. The results would determine whether the cubs could thrive on their own and what Koko's legacy as their caregiver really meant. What happened next would challenge everything the caregivers thought they knew about compassion, instinct, and the bonds that can form across the boundaries of nature. Koko's story shows that compassion can change what we think is possible. Remember her gentle grooming, the way she calmed the cubs when they were at their weakest. Those moments remind us that empathy can reshape nature's rules. A gorilla nurturing leopard cubs isn't just unusual. It's proof that care and understanding can cross even the widest divides. If a gorilla can nurture predators, perhaps we can find compassion even in the hardest places around us. What stood out to you most about Koko's bond with the cubs? Share your thoughts or your favorite moment below, and if you're moved by stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.